I'm Tony Little and I work for Organic Centre Wales. And a big part of our work is looking at creating new products and looking at see if we can add value to some of what we're already producing. And our wool, and Welsh organic wool, falls definitely into this category. This short film will be looking at what the opportunities are for producing and processing and indeed marketing wool in Wales.
My name's Sue. I'm partner in Linvy Textiles. We make women's wear, knitwear and dress wear in British wool, Welsh where we can get it. We're certified by the Soil Association to global organic textile standards for our knitwear and also for dyeing with natural dyes. We stick mainly to women's wear because that's what we understand best. Our knitwear consists of jumpers and accessories, and for the dress wear, dresses, trousers and lightweight jackets in flannel, which is traditionally a Welsh fabric, although it's not woven at the moment from Welsh wool. It's a British wool because of getting the right yarn for the fabric. We often talk to our customers about the organic process of the wool. They like to see the Soil Association symbol or the GOTS symbol on the products. I think it's something that they've come to trust. Although the garments tend to have to be more expensive because of the processing costs for the wool, it's something they do believe in, and it gives you that traceability and the confidence in the production of the item at the end of the day. We've had terrific interest in the project from designers and makers. We've had to limit it to the UK, but we've also had interest from Canada and Germany and Holland as well. Several people have approached us and said how can they get hold of fabric because it's so difficult to get hold of. People are very keen to take part, to be able to use the organic fabric. It's something they really believe in. And it's highlighted also the lack of availability of the fabrics for designers to use, and that's what we're hoping to address.
I'm Juliet Morris. I farm at Ystrad Farm in Brechfa, and as well as a farm I have a small wool business. It's always been a passion as a natural, renewable, sustainable fibre. To me it's just many uses, both in terms of clothing, in terms of textiles, people forget, curtains, carpets, rugs, and also increasingly as in industrial applications as well as insulating. These are things we've been using it since time began, and I think we're gradually rediscovering the value of wool, and that there are no synthetic fibres that do as many purposes as wool, our natural, renewable resource, does. So the emphasis of my flock is about wool, not about lamb, and that has got a number of implications really for the way in which I manage my sheep, but also the type of sheep that I have. I breed sheep that perhaps many commercial farmers would not be that interested in. I breed Wensleydale long wool sheep, who have the most highly prized of the British wool breeds. I'm also particularly interested in naturally coloured sheep, again, which traditionally sheep farmers have not particularly wanted black sheep in their flock, and I'm deliberately trying to increase the number of black sheep in my flock by using a black ram. The way in which that changes then also my management is that I keep my sheep for longer. I'm not finishing lamb in the autumn. I will finish as store lambs so that I can either winter shear or I'll finish them as hogget, which I prefer actually, so that I get a full year's fleece from the sheep at the end of the year. In terms of organic certification, there are also implications for the way that I manage my wool on the hoof. There are all the control bodies have slightly different standards, but the Soil Association, which is my control body, is very strict in terms of limiting the pesticides that I can use as external applications on my fleece, and particularly ensuring that there's a 3-month withdrawal period between the application of anything and shearing. Shearing is obviously critically important, and the quality of the shearing. I think one of the things that has slightly changed in the industry is that because the value of the sheep has fallen from the back of the sheep, so the fleece has not been particularly worthwhile. People have felt that when they're shearing, they're doing it only for welfare reasons. Now, to me, I'm shearing in order to harvest a key crop, which is my wool. I think shearers, good as they are often also thinking about the quality at the end of the shear is how the sheep looks, and not necessarily how the fleece looks. So for me, things like second cuts, for example, where the shear is going back over to tidy up the sheep, that has no value. In fact, it undermines the value of my fleece. Things like contaminants, which no shearer wants to get caught up in anyway, things like baler twine. I don't use my fleece as a whiteboard, which I know lots of farmers do, and it's very tempting. So when my lambs are born, I'm tagging them fairly early on. I'm not spray painting them because I know when it comes to processing, the spray paint just does not come off. I think most farmers will sell their wool to the wool board. It's a legal requirement, actually, for anybody who owns over 4 sheep. You are legally obliged to sell your wool to the board. However, the board is increasingly relaxed about people developing their own markets, and it is possible to get a certificate from them that permits you to sell direct. That's what I do. And there are all sorts of opportunities, especially if you've got really nice fleecy sheep, or if you have coloured sheep, for example, where the fleeces will get little return from the board, but actually the world of hand spinners, felters, crafters, there's a huge growing market in all that, a real demand for quality natural fibres.
For dyeing to organic standards, we are not allowed to use certain substances, certain chemicals. We're not allowed to use dyes that contain any heavy metals or carcinogenic substances. In the early days of the standards, this meant that natural dyes were the only option. It took a few years before a company came up with synthetic dyes that were acceptable to the standards. Right, these dyes all come from a company in France. They're certified to Global Organic Textile Standards, one of the few companies that are. They work with farmers across France and other small initiatives and groups in tropical countries to produce the plants that give these colours. The first thing that you need to do, you take the raw fleece, or you can start with the yarn. Either way, it needs to be washed to make sure it's clean. Then we cook that up with some alum. Alum is used to combine with the yarn or the fleece and makes a base for the dye to stick to. That goes in the boiler. We've got some alum here. It's white powder. It's used to be dug out of the ground, it's now manufactured. Now this is fleece in here, it's been rinsed, mordanted and then rinsed off. It's now ready to go into the dye pot. I'm going to use cochineal on this amount here. Cochineal is it's very concentrated and also a very expensive dye. It comes from a tiny insect, it's not a beetle, it's a tiny scale insect. I don't know if you can see in there. That goes in a jug of water to dissolve it. Now I'm going to put this into a bucket of warm water. I usually start with everything warm. Next thing we do is put in our fleece. So it should start to turn colour straight away. So it starts to soak up. And that needs to simmer in there for about 45 minutes. See, it's starting to take up some of the pinky colour. When that comes out, it's going to look something like that. That's one that was dyed earlier. It'll probably come out slightly darker than that, but that's the sort of colour that cochineal will give.
Right, this is some fleeces I haven't even opened yet. They've just come in from a local feed, as it happens. This is a Ryland. So what happens, we'll open the fleece out and sort it out on a sheet to get any of the skirtings off, any nasty bits, not such good bits there. We'll discard those and just keep the good fleece. It'll be pulled apart by hand, and then it'll have to go through the scouring, our small scale scouring plant. Now, general scouring plants are very large tanks, very, very long, and they hold a lot of water. It costs a lot of money to heat the water and the soap. So we've had to design a small scale scouring plant that will cope with small flocks of rare breeds. So we have to just wash it in this tank here, and then we have it spin it out on the spin dryer, and then we have to do a cycle of washing like that, build up a number of tubs full, then we'll just jettison the water and rinse it then, and then spin it again, and then dry it. And then it's ready to again for the next processing then. Once the fleece has been dried, it's laid out and blended with oil to assist in the carding. You take out the lining initially, and then you add oil to assist in the carding and spinning. This is called a fear-knot, which roughly opens up the fleece. And it's just loose pegs teasing it out gently, ready to go into the carding set. Right, from the fear-knot, the fleece is put into the hopper, the carding set. It is then fed through down this lattice over the rollers. This is known as a scribbler, and this slowly, they all work teasing the fibres out gently so as not to break them, to get them all the same direction. And so they work all around these rollers until it comes to the end, and then it goes across the gantry to the final carding set there, which is the finer one, which then teases out again and onto a roving, which is then ready to go into the spinning. So this is the roving, how it comes off the carding set. As you can see, it's a very, very weak roving. But this is drafted on the machine here and then spun into a yarn. So that roving there comes into that. Once it's been spun, we then work out our design of warp or fabric, and there are two basic threads in weaving. You know, long threads, which are your warp threads, and your weft threads, which go across. So we set up the warp on this warping creel. This warp that's being set up now is going to have about nearly 1,000 ends. So we can't cope with all those ends in one go. So we have to build them up in by section by section. So this is a section. This will be wound round this drum, a prescribed length, according to what we're doing. Cut off, and another section adjacent to it, exactly the same length, and another section by the side of it again, exactly the same, cut off, and we carry on like that across the warping load until we've got out to our required width and number of ends. In this instance, as I say, just under 1,000. Once we come to the last one, the warping side is finished here. We have a warp beam which goes in the back of the machine and is taken off as one mass and rolled round the beam, and that is then taken into the loom, and the loom is threaded up. I'll set the loom going now, and you can see the actual weft in the top.
For wool is quite an interesting thing. I think after decades of decline, when farmers have really lamented the lack of return on their fleeces, it's really changed. And I think the Wool Board has a strong sense of optimism about the future. Certainly prices a couple of years ago hit a 25-year high. I know things have slumped a little bit. I think there's a sense of the bubble bursting. But I think we live in exciting times, and I think it's not just about the check people are getting back from the Wool Board. I think there is a general sense of optimism from the campaign for wool, the demand from high-end fashion, also high street fashion.